Humanity's arrogance had always been its defining flaw. At least, that's what the Zyrith Empire thought when they sent their fleet to Earth, a planet they deemed primitive, barely worth noticing. The Zyrith considered themselves benevolent conquerors, offering enlightenment to those who surrendered and annihilation to those who didn't. Earth fell into the latter category. The first strike came without warning. At precisely 3:42 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Zyrith orbital bombardments reduced Earth's largest cities to smoldering craters. Billions perished in the first hour. The Zyrith didn't even send demands. They didn't think Earth warranted negotiations. Their fleet hovered above the planet like vultures over carrion, observing their handiwork. But humanity wasn't finished. In the quiet void of Earth's last operational orbital station, Admiral Elena Vega stood before a wall of monitors. Her features were sharp, her brown eyes hardened by grief and fury. The screens displayed chaos: burning cities, broken families, survivors clinging to hope in underground bunkers. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself, and turned to her team. "The Zyrith want us to roll over and die," she said, her voice cold but resolute. "They've underestimated us. Their mistake." The room was silent, save for the hum of machinery. Technicians, military officers, and scientists stared at her, their faces pale but determined. Among them stood Dr. Ethan Core, one of Earth's brightest minds. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "They think we're helpless. They don't know about Project Retribution." At those words, a ripple of hope spread through the room. Project Retribution wasn't just a weapon, it was humanity's last, desperate gamble. Years of secret research had culminated in an energy system capable of turning the enemy's technology against them. It was untested, unstable, and potentially catastrophic, but it was all they had. Elena nodded. "We'll make them pay for every life they've taken, every city they've burned." She stepped closer to the central console, where holographic projections of the Zyrith fleet spun lazily in the air. "Dr. Core, how soon can we deploy?" Ethan hesitated. "We need 48 hours to calibrate the system. The energy output is unpredictable." "Then you have 24, Elena said, cutting him off. "This isn't about perfection. It's about survival." In the depths of space, aboard the flagship of the Zyrith fleet, High Commander Thalrix lounged in his command chair. His golden-scaled face bore a smug expression as he watched Earth's surface burn. To him, this was nothing more than pest control. "Humans are amusing creatures," he remarked to his second-in-command. "Their technology is barely above primitive. This was a waste of resources." The officer beside him chuckled, his mandibles clicking in agreement. "Perhaps we should take a few specimens. Their resilience might make for interesting study." Thalrix waved a dismissive hand. "No need. They'll all be dust soon enough. Leave the stragglers to fend for themselves. They'll die off eventually." Back on the orbital station, Elena wasn't interested in dying off. She watched as teams of engineers worked tirelessly to arm the fleet. The ships were outdated compared to the Zyrith's sleek vessels, but they were outfitted with modifications that would make them deadly. Humanity had learned quickly, reverse engineering the debris from fallen Zyrith ships to develop shields and weapons that could punch through the enemy's defenses. Elena's second-in-command, Captain Darius Cole, approached her. He was a veteran of countless battles, his grizzled face a testament to years of service. "Admiral, the fleet is almost ready, but morale is shaky. People are scared. They've lost families, homes." "So have I," Elena said sharply. Then, softening her tone, she added, "But fear can be a weapon, Darius. Let it drive us." Darius nodded, though doubt lingered in his eyes. "What's the plan?" "We hit them where it hurts," Elena replied. "Their arrogance is their weakness. They don't think we can fight back, so we'll show them how wrong they are." She gestured to the holographic display, where a Zyrith supply convoy was highlighted. "We start small. Take out their logistics. Starve their fleet. Then, when they're scrambling, we unleash retribution." The room buzzed with quiet determination. Orders were issued, and the first wave of human ships prepared for launch. The vessels were cloaked in experimental stealth fields, another gift from the Xyretha's wreckage. As the ships departed, Elena remained on the station, her gaze fixed on the stars. She knew the odds were against them. The Xyrath were stronger, faster, and better equipped. But they lacked one thing: humanity's relentless drive to survive. Hours passed, and the first reports came in. The convoy raid was a success. Human ships had struck fast and hard, disappearing before the Xyrath could retaliate. Supplies critical to the alien fleet's operations were destroyed, and for the first time, the Xyrath commanders felt a pang of concern. Thalrix received the news with disbelief. Impossible. These humans? They're insects. How could they? He cut himself off, his golden eyes narrowing. No matter. We'll crush them soon enough. But the humans weren't waiting to be crushed. On Earth, underground bunkers buzzed with activity as survivors began organizing resistance efforts. Makeshift factories churned out weapons, and scientists worked around the clock to improve the fleet's capabilities. Elena watched the progress with a mixture of pride and sorrow. The cost of survival was high, and not everyone would make it. But she couldn't afford to dwell on the losses, not when the future of humanity was at stake. Standing on the bridge of her command ship, she addressed her crew. They thought they could destroy us. They thought we'd fall to our knees. But humanity doesn't kneel. We stand. We fight. And we will win. Cheers erupted, echoing through the ship. For the first time since the attack began, hope burned bright in their hearts. And in the cold void of space, the Xyrath would soon learn that humans, when pushed to the brink, were anything but primitive. The convoy raid was a resounding success, but there was no time for celebration. In the shadowed command room of the orbital station, Elena reviewed the results with her team. The Xyretha's logistical backbone had been hit hard, but the true value of the mission wasn't in the destruction. It was in the data. The ships had returned with scans of Xyrath communication protocols, shield frequencies, and engine schematics. Ethan Core worked furiously alongside the tech team, decoding the information. Their fleet operates on a centralized neural network, he explained, his voice quick with urgency. If we can breach it, even for a few minutes, we can cause chaos. Elena leaned over his shoulder, scanning the diagrams on his screen. How long until you can develop a countermeasure? Ethan hesitated. We can try to jam their network within 12 hours, but infiltration, true control, could take days. We don't have days, Elena said firmly. Focus on the jamming. We'll take the fight to them while they're blind. As her orders rippled through the fleet, the Xyrath remained blissfully unaware of humanity's growing capabilities. Thalrix, still confident in the superiority of his forces, dismissed the convoy raid as an anomaly. They were lucky, he scoffed in a private meeting with his senior officers. A fluke. Double the patrols and reinforce the outer supply lines. They won't catch us off guard again. But the Xyretha's arrogance was their downfall. Humanity exploited every gap in their defenses, striking swiftly and unpredictably. A stealth frigate disabled a key communications relay, cutting off one section of the Xyrath fleet from the rest. Another strike targeted a weapons depot, detonating it in a fiery chain reaction visible from Earth's surface. Elena watched the footage with grim satisfaction. They're starting to panic, she noted, gesturing to a live feed of erratic Xyrath fleet movements. This is just the beginning. Not everyone was as confident. In the strategy room, tensions boiled over as leaders debated the next steps. General Briggs, representing Earth's ground forces, slammed his fist on the table. We need to focus on defense. If the Xyrath retaliate in full force, we won't survive another attack. And what would you suggest? Snapped Admiral Cole. Hide in bunkers while they glass the planet? That's not an option. Elena raised a hand, silencing the argument. Enough. We're not here to debate whether to fight. We're already in this war. Our only option is to win. The room fell silent. No one could argue with her resolve. As preparations continued, Elena took a rare moment to herself, staring out at the stars. She thought of her family, lost in the first wave of attacks, and let the grief wash over her briefly before pushing it aside. There was no room for personal pain now, Not when so much was at stake. Hours later, the first tests of Ethan's jamming system began. A small fleet of stealth ships approached a Xyrath patrol group, activating the jammer as they entered range. For a brief moment, chaos erupted among the alien ships. Communications failed, targeting systems flickered, and their formation broke. The human fleet struck hard, disabling 2 ships and forcing the others to retreat. It wasn't a decisive victory, but it proved that the Xyrath weren't invincible. Word of the success spread quickly through the fleet. For the first time, humanity's soldiers felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting back. Elena capitalized on the momentum, rallying her crew. Every victory, no matter how small, is a step closer to survival, she told them. The Xyrath wanted to break us. Instead, we'll make them bleed. Back on the Xyrath flagship, Thalrix grew increasingly frustrated. Reports of human strikes flooded in, each one more damaging than the last. His officers scrambled to adjust their strategies, but the Xyrath weren't used to being outmaneuvered. Deploy more ships to the outer sectors, Thalrix barked. And double the fleet guarding our command center. I want no more surprises. But humanity wasn't done surprising them. In a daring operation, Elena's team targeted a Xyrath research station, hoping to steal advanced tech that could accelerate Project Retribution. The mission was risky, with no guarantee of success. As the stealth ships slipped past Xyrath patrols, Ethan monitored the mission from the station. We're pushing our luck, he muttered, his hands trembling slightly. That's what we do best, Elena replied. The strike team succeeded, returning with a trove of data and alien components. Among them was a prototype power core far more efficient than anything humanity had developed. Ethan's eyes widened as he examined it. With this, Retribution could be operational in half the time. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Then let's get to work. Each victory came at a cost, and the losses weighed heavily on Elena. Pilots and soldiers gave their lives in every mission, and the names of the fallen filled her reports. But she kept going, driven by the knowledge that their sacrifices weren't in vain. As the fleet prepared for its next strike, Elena stood before her crew, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. We've come this far because we refuse to give up. The Xyrath may outnumber us, outgun us, but they don't understand what it means to fight for survival. To fight for each other. That's our strength, and it's something they'll never take from us. The crew cheered, their morale bolstered by her words. In the silence that followed, Elena whispered to herself, "They bombed us because they thought we were weak. Now, they'll see how wrong they were." The war was far from over, but humanity had found its footing. And with each passing day, the Xyrath's grip on victory slipped further from their grasp. The Xyrath fleet began to shift tactics, adapting to humanity's growing resistance. Patrols tightened, convoys doubled their escorts, and their command center fortified its defenses. Yet despite these adjustments, the cracks in their arrogance widened. They could no longer ignore the humans' resilience, and Thalrix's frustration boiled over. Their persistence is becoming an irritation, Thalrix growled during a strategy meeting. His officers avoided his gaze, knowing better than to challenge him in such a state. We underestimated them. That will not happen again. He ordered an aggressive push, a full-scale sweep of the remaining human resistance. Every Xyrath ship not guarding critical assets was dispatched to scour Earth's surface and surrounding space. The message was clear: annihilation. Elena Vega and her team anticipated this escalation. Monitoring Xyrath movements, they watched as the enemy spread its forces thinner in an effort to crush humanity. This was their moment. "We've got them overextending," Darius Cole said, his voice tight with a mix of anticipation and concern. "But if we misstep now, it's over." Elena nodded, her focus unwavering. "We don't misstep. We've spent weeks bleeding them, and now they're desperate. This is the opening we've been waiting for." Ethan worked feverishly to finalize the next stage of Project Retribution. The stolen Xyrath power core proved more challenging to integrate than expected, but the potential payoff was enormous. "We're close," he told Elena, his voice strained from exhaustion. but activating it could overload the system. It might take out their fleet, or it might take out us. Elena's expression hardened. We don't have the luxury of guarantees. Prepare for deployment. As the Xyrath fleet combed through Earth's ruins, human forces launched a series of diversionary strikes. Small, mobile units attacked and vanished, drawing Xyrath ships away from their primary targets. The chaos spread, and for the first time, cracks appeared in the Xyrath's disciplined coordination. Thalrix's fury mounted with each report. "How are they evading us?" he demanded. "They're insects, nothing more." But the truth was undeniable. Humanity was no longer a nuisance. They were a threat. Elena prepared her fleet for the final push. Every operational ship was armed and ready, their crews resolute despite the odds. She addressed them one last time before the mission. "This is it," she said, her voice carrying across every vessel. "We've fought harder and sacrificed more than anyone thought possible. Now we finish this. Not just for those we've lost, but for the future we're fighting to protect. Let's show them what it means to face humanity." The fleet erupted into cheers, their determination palpable. The plan was audacious. Lure the Xyrath fleet into a trap, then activate Project Retribution to disable their neural network. With their coordination disrupted, the humans would launch a decisive counterattack. Ethan worked from the orbital station, monitoring the power core as it surged to life. "We're approaching maximum output," he reported, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "Once we activate, there's no turning back." Elena's fleet engaged the Xyrath, drawing them into a carefully orchestrated ambush. The humans fought with ferocity, their ships darting through the enemy lines with surprising precision. The Xyrath, caught off guard by the intensity of the assault, began to falter. At the critical moment, Ethan activated Project Retribution. A pulse of energy rippled through space, invisible to the naked eye, but devastating in its effect. Xyrath ships stuttered as their systems crashed, their neural network thrown into chaos. On the flagship, Thalrix staggered as his command interface went dark. "What is this?" he roared, slamming his fist on the console. Around him, officers scrambled to regain control, but it was futile. The once unbeatable fleet was paralyzed. Elena didn't waste a second. "All units, engage. Take them down." Human ships swarmed the Xyrath fleet, targeting their vulnerable vessels with surgical precision. One by one, the alien ships fell, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Thalrix's flagship was the last to face the onslaught. Elena led the charge personally, her ship firing the final salvo that breached the Xyrath's impenetrable hull. In his final moments, Thalrix stared at the humans on his view screen, disbelief etched across his golden features. "Impossible," he whispered, just before his ship exploded in a brilliant flash. The battle was won, but the cost was staggering. Human ships limped back to the orbital station, their crews battered but victorious. Elena stood on the bridge, her shoulders heavy with the weight of what they had achieved. "We did it," Darius said quietly, his voice filled with a mix of awe and exhaustion. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the wreckage of the Xyrath fleet. "They thought they could break us," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But humanity doesn't break. We endure." Across Earth, survivors emerged from their shelters, looking to the skies with a renewed sense of hope. The war wasn't over, but humanity had sent a message. They would not go quietly. The silence after the battle was deafening. Wreckage from the Xyrath fleet drifted in orbit, a graveyard of shattered ships. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth's skies were clear. But the price of victory weighed heavily. Elena walked through the docking bay, where wounded soldiers were being treated and damaged ships were being repaired. The faces around her reflected exhaustion, grief, and a glimmer of pride. They had survived what should have been impossible. Yet, there was no celebration. Only the grim knowledge that this war was far from over. Reports began flooding in from reconnaissance teams. The destruction of the Xyrath fleet had created a power vacuum in their empire. Other species oppressed by the Xyrath were rising up, seizing the opportunity to fight back. Humanity's defiance had ignited a rebellion across the galaxy. Elena gathered her senior officers for a briefing. Ethan, still recovering from the strain of Project Retribution, presented the findings. The Xyrath command structure is fractured, he explained. Their central fleet was destroyed here, and without their neural network, they're scrambling to maintain control in other systems. But make no mistake, they're not defeated. Not yet. Admiral Cole leaned forward, his expression grim. How long before they regroup? Ethan hesitated. Weeks, maybe months. But they'll come back with reinforcements, and this time, they'll be ready for us. Elena took a deep breath. Then we use this time wisely. We've proven that we can fight them. Now we need to ensure we can finish this war on our terms. The strategy shifted from survival to offense. Humanity began reaching out to the newly rebellious species, offering intelligence and coordination. In return, these allies provided resources, technology, and knowledge of the Xyrath's weaknesses. Elena personally led negotiations with a species known as the HFY, insectoid warriors who had been enslaved by the Xyrath for centuries. Their leader, a towering figure named Tal, spoke in a low, resonant voice. "We fight not for vengeance, but for freedom," he said. "If humanity stands with us, we will fight by your side." The alliance marked a turning point. With new allies and access to advanced alien technology, humanity's forces grew stronger. Ships were retrofitted with Xyrath shields and weapons, and the stolen power core became the basis for a new generation of starships. As preparations continued, Elena found herself reflecting on the journey so far. She thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the resilience of those who remained. In the quiet moments, she wrote letters to the families of fallen soldiers, her words carrying the weight of her gratitude and sorrow. The final phase of the plan began to take shape. Intelligence from the HFY revealed the location of the Xyrath's central command hub, a massive orbital station known as the Nexus. It was the heart of their empire, the source of their power and control. Ethan's team worked tirelessly to develop a new weapon, one capable of delivering a crippling blow to the Nexus. It was a gamble, but if successful, it could end the war in a single strike. On the eve of the mission, Elena addressed the combined fleet of humans and allies. Her voice echoed through every ship, carrying her determination to every corner of the alliance. "This is the moment we've fought for," she said. "The Xyrath believed they were invincible, but we've shown them the power of unity, of hope, of defiance. Tomorrow, we strike not just for Earth, but for every world that has suffered under their rule. Together, we end this." The fleet launched into the void, a patchwork armada of human ingenuity and alien strength. As they approached the Nexus, the Xyrath forces rallied to defend it. The battle was fierce, with losses on both sides, but the Allied fleet pressed forward, refusing to yield. Elena's ship led the final charge, breaking through the Xyrath defenses and delivering the weapon to the Nexus. Ethan guided the activation remotely, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. "This is it," he said, his voice calm but resolute. Initiating sequence. The weapon detonated, unleashing a massive energy surge that ripped through the Nexus. The station imploded, taking the Xyrath command structure with it. Across the galaxy, Xyrath forces faltered as their leaders were cut off, their empire collapsing in a cascade of rebellion and chaos. The cost of victory was immense. Ships limped back to Earth, their crews battered and scarred. Elena stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars, knowing that the war was over, but the healing had just begun. Humanity had survived. More than that, they had proven that even in the darkest of times, they could rise above, united by the unyielding spirit of survival. The message was clear. They had been bombed, but they were far from broken.